Hello friends, I'm Arushi, founder of Talent Decrypt, and in this video we'll be talking about STL. STL is a very important topic, and it is really important to have good understanding of STL if you want to excel in any competitive programming exam or want to clear interviews. Now let's have a look at what is STL. STL, as the name suggests, is Standard Template Library. But I personally also call it Magic Library. Why magic? Because it is about the data structures and algorithms which are already implemented in the internal library of C++, and we can directly use them in our code without actually implementing them. Which means if I want to do sorting, then I need not implement the complete sort function. I can directly use the sort function through STL and can use it in my code. So this not only makes my coding easier and fun, but also make it more powerful and less time consuming. In this video, we'll be covering the first data structure, which is vector. Vector is similar to an array, but it might sound a little complex to those who are hearing this word for the first time. But trust me, it is very easy to understand and even easier to implement. What is vector? Vector is a dynamic array. Whenever we initialize an array, we need to initialize it with the size, the number of elements that we want to store in that particular array. But imagine a situation wherein we do not know how many elements we want to store, or if the incoming data is dynamic. In such situations, we use vector because it has the capacity to resize itself whenever an element is inserted or deleted. So we need not take care of the size, and the container itself manages the size whenever we push an element or whenever we pop an element. In vector, similar to an array, there is contiguous memory allocation. That means we can access the elements of a vector with the help of its indexes. Now let's have a look at how we can define a vector. What is the syntax of defining a vector? So we can define a vector by writing vector, the data type of the elements that we want to store in a particular vector, the name or the identifier of our vector, and these are the two optional parameters, size and the initial value. Size refers to the size of the vector, and initial value is if we want to fill our vector with some initial value. For example, here we wrote vector int v 6 and -1. This means we want to create a vector which needs to have integer kind of values, and the name of the vector is v, and there needs to be 6 elements, and all those elements needs to be initialized with -1. So we have a vector v which has size 6, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and all these values are initialized with -1. Again, when I define vector int v5, what if I do not want to initialize my vector with any value? In such situations, I will not pass this particular parameter. So I'll only pass size parameter, and I did here the same way. So this will create a vector v which has size and integer kind of values, and it will take a default value of integer, which is 0. Generally, we neither pass size nor the initial value, and we just create a vector for ourselves. So we can define it like vector int and v. So it will create a vector v which can store integer kind of data, and it will be an empty vector, and we can perform many operations on it as and when we require. Suppose we want to push elements, we want to pop elements, or any other operation that is required. Of how can we define our vector and why are vectors called resizable arrays. Now let's see how can we implement them in our code. So to use the vector container in our code, we need to include the vector header file. Let's see how can we insert the elements in our vector. For that, there is a member function of the vector class called push_back, which takes data as input parameter, and this function inserts this data at the end of my vector. So here I have created a vector v which is an empty vector. And when I'll write v dot push underscore back 20, where 20 is my data, then this will insert 20 in my vector v. Again, when I'll write v dot push underscore back 10, this will insert 10 at the end of my vector v. Similarly, 30, 50 and 40. So, after all these commands, my vector v looks something like this. And this will have 5 elements and their indexes will be 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4. Now what if at some point in time I want to know how many elements are there in my vector? For that we have another member function called size. This function returns the number of elements that are there in my vector. So if I'll write v dot size, it should return 5. Let's try to print how this function behaves. I'm running my code. Perfect. So this has printed 5 as was expected. Now we are good with the size function. Now let's see, can we access the elements of the vector by their index? What if I want to know what is the element that is present at index 2? Can I also print that? Let's see. Perfect. So here, by accessing the element from its index, we can get 30, which is the element that was present at index 2. So using the same method, let's try to print all the elements of my vector v. I'll use a simple for loop. See, by printing all the elements of my vector, I have got 20, 10, 30, 50 and 40, which is my vector v. Now let's discuss how can we remove elements from our vector. For removing elements, there is a function called pop underscore back. And this works somewhat similar to push underscore back. Push underscore back was inserting the elements at the end of my vector, and pop underscore back will remove the elements from the end of my vector. So when I write v dot pop underscore back, this will automatically remove the last element of my vector. Let's try this. Now let's try to print our vector. See, initially the vector was this, but when I have popped an element, then after that 40 was removed and now my vector looks like this. So what if I do not want to remove the element from the last position and I want to remove the elements within a certain range or at a given position? For that we have another function called erase. This function takes two parameters, S and E. S and E represents the range between which I want to remove the elements. It is very important to note here that S is inclusive whereas E is exclusive. That means this will erase the elements between the range S and E minus 1. So here, what if I want to erase my complete vector? Let's see how I can do this. It is very important to note what is v dot begin and what is v dot end. Whenever we have a vector, Then v dot begin or the begin function will give us an iterator that will point to the memory location of our first element, and v dot end will give us an iterator that will point to the memory location, listen to it very carefully, that will point to the memory location that will be following our last element. The memory location that is following our last element. So here when I'll give begin, my s is v dot begin and my e as v dot end, then my complete vector, which will be this, will be erased. Let's see if my complete vector has been erased or not. I'll check if my vector is empty. Perfect. So this has completely emptied my vector. When I write v dot erase from v dot begin till v dot end, this has completely removed all the elements of my vector and my vector is now empty. This empty function returns true if my vector is empty and it returns false if my vector is not empty. So here it was true, so it has printed empty. Now let's have a look at how can we sort our vector. For sorting, we need to include the algorithm header file. Then we'll be able to use the sort function which sorts our vector in a given range of s and e, where again s is inclusive and e is exclusive. Similarly as we did in the erase function. So let's try to sort our vector from beginning to end. And then let's print our vector after sorting. I'll comment the above code in which we had erased the vector. I'll try to run this code. See, initially the vector was this, and after sorting, my complete sorted vector is this. This vector has been sorted in ascending order. Now what if I want to sort this vector in descending order? For that, I can create a own comparator function of mine, wherein I'll create a global function my comparator, and we'll take two inputs because we are comparing integer type of data. So I will take integer input a and second number as int b. And now I'll pass this comparator function in my sort function. I'll again run my code to see if something has changed. See, initially the vector was sorted in ascending order. Now, because I have passed the comparator function, so my vector is now sorted in descending order, which means by default the sort function was using a comparator wherein it was returning true when the first element was lesser than the second element. Now I have created our own comparator where I am returning true when the first element is greater than the second element. Now our vector is sorted. Let's see if we can apply binary search on our sorted vector. The function to apply binary search is binary_search, the range between which I want to find my element and the element. Again, S is inclusive and E is exclusive. This function returns true if my element is found, and it returns false, or 0 if my element is not present in the vector. Let's try to apply this in our code. It is important to note that this binary search function works only on vector which is sorted in ascending order. And here, using the myComparator function, we have sorted our vector in descending order. So we'll have to remove the myComparator function so that our array becomes sorted in ascending order again. Let's try to run this code. This is printing 1 because this has found that 20 is present in our vector. Now, with the help of binary search function, we are in the position to tell whether our number is present in the vector or not. Let's see if we can tell the index at which our number is present. For this, we have a function called lower_bound. This function takes parameter as the range between which I need to find the lower bound and my number, for which I need to calculate the lower bound. This function returns an iterator to the element which is the lower bound of my number. Now let's understand what is lower bound. Lower bound is the first occurrence of the element which is equal to or just greater than my number. Let's understand this through example. Let's assume our vector as this. Now, if I need to calculate the lower bound of 20, then this will return me an iterator that will point to the first occurrence of 20 because 20 is present in our vector. Now, if I want to calculate the lower bound of 40, this will return me an iterator because 40 is not present, so this will return me an iterator that will point to an element which is just greater than 40, which is 50. So this will return me an iterator that will point to 50. Now let's try to do this in our code. As this is returning an iterator, so I'll have to save this in a iterator. So I'll create an iterator on my vector v. I'll redefine my vector v for our convenience. Let's try to get the lower bound of 20. Here it is important to understand that IT1 is an iterator. Now we need to think from an iterator how can we get the index of our element 20. What if I subtract the iterator that is pointing to the initial element, the first element from IT1? Then the difference will give me the index of 20. Currently the index of my elements are 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4. Let's try to get the difference. See, here I am getting 1, which is the index of 20. Because I have subtracted the iterator to the first element from the iterator that is pointing to the first occurrence of 20. Now let's see what will happen if we calculate the lower bound of 30. This is giving me the output as 3.
which is the index of my element 40. Because 30 was not present in our vector, so this has given me the iterator that will point to the first occurrence of the element which is just greater than 30, which is 40. So this has given me the index of 40. Now let's understand another function which is called upper underscore bound. This function is a very interesting function, and this gives us the iterator that will point to the element which is strictly greater than our number. For example, in the same array, in the same vector, if I need to calculate the upper bound of 40, then this will give me an iterator that will point to the element 50. Now what if I calculate the upper bound of 30? Though 30 is present in the vector, still it will give me the iterator that will point to the element 50, which is just greater than 30. What if I need to calculate the upper bound of 10? So this will find which is the element which is just greater than 10, that is 20. So this will give me an iterator that will point to the first occurrence of my element 20. Now let's try to get the upper bound of 20. Calculated the upper bound of 20, this has given me an iterator that is pointing to 40. This is giving me the index of, the difference is giving me the index of 40, because this has found, the upper bound has found the element which was just greater than 20, that was 40. So this is giving me an iterator that will point to 40. Now let's see if we can use this upper bound and lower bound to calculate something else. If you look here very carefully, you will realize that what if I subtract the lower bound of my element from the upper bound? Then the difference will give me the number of occurrence of my element or the count of my element in that particular vector. Let's try to do this. IT3 is the upper bound of 20 and IT1 is the lower bound of 20. Now let's see if this difference can give me the count of number 20 in my vector. Here our output is 2, which is the count of our element 20. Let's see if we can calculate count by some other method. There is a function called count. This function takes parameter as the range between which I need to calculate the count of my number and my number for which I need to calculate the count. So in our vector, if I'll pass v dot begin, v dot end and the number 20, then this will return me 2. Let's try to get the count of 20. It is important to note that by subtracting the lower bound from the upper bound, I was getting the count of the element, and the same thing I am getting by using our count function. So by both the methods, I can calculate the occurrence of my element in our vector. In this video, we have almost discussed all the operations and all the functions that we can use with vector. Now it's up to you that how well you practice and get well versed with all these concepts. I strongly recommend you to just go and code all of them and check yourself how they perform. Stay tuned to my channel for more videos like this. and do let me know in the comment section if you find this useful. Till then, bye bye, take care, do like, share and subscribe.